In forgotten corners of the earth, where the air is heavy with green breath and the soil remembers more than any scroll, there stands a tree marked by silence. It is said that before ink touched parchment, before stone was carved with the names of kings, the cacao tree was already waiting. Imagine it now, a canopy woven with shadow and silver mist, broad leaves trembling softly beneath the hush of early dawn, the forest still wrapped in the last blue veil of night. Beneath that living ceiling, the cacao tree rises not in arrogance, but in quiet devotion, its trunk steady, its pods hanging like small star-marked lanterns suspended in green twilight. Whispers tell us that this was no ordinary tree. Some believe it stood as a bridge between realms, its roots drinking from the underworld, its branches brushing against celestial breath. Beneath the silence of that ancient jungle, elders once moved barefoot over damp earth, their steps slow and reverent. They did not harvest in haste. They listened first. They listened to the soil, to the hum of unseen insects, to the distant echo of rivers slipping through stone. And when the moment felt sacred, when the air shifted almost imperceptibly, they reached for the pods as though lifting something alive with hidden fire. It is said each pod was cradled as if it held a fragment of the first dawn. Inside, the seeds rested in pale pulp, veiled and waiting, bitter, dark, unassuming. And yet, in their stillness, there was a gravity that drew the spirit inward. The elders knew this bitterness was not to be feared. It was to be honored. For in those forgotten centuries, sweetness was not the measure of worth. The seeds were laid upon woven mats. They were dried beneath a watchful sun, turned gently by careful hands. Some believe that during this time, prayers were whispered into the wind, not loud or commanding, but soft as breath against stone. It is said, the stories murmur, that the gods pressed wisdom into the bitter heart of cacao. Not wisdom of conquest, not wisdom of power, but awakening. When the seeds were roasted over low flame, their scent rose like incense, curling through the trees. The fragrance was deep and earthy, almost oceanic in its weight. It drifted into the night where stars blinked through the canopy like distant witnesses. Then came the grinding, stone against stone, a slow spiral of motion, seeds surrendering into paste beneath rhythmic hands. The sound was steady, almost meditative, a pulse echoing the heartbeat of the forest itself. Water was added, chili, perhaps flour, perhaps memory. The liquid that formed was dark as fertile soil after rain. It was poured from vessel to vessel, lifted high so that air would enter and foam would bloom upon its surface like river foam beneath moonlight. This was no casual drink. Painted vessels held it, clay marked with spirals, serpents and celestial signs. The cup was raised towards silent skies, not in celebration, but in communion. It was not sweetness they sought, but clarity, a sacred stirring beneath the ribs, a widening of the inward eye. Some believe cacao opened chambers within the mind, where visions waited like sleeping birds. Others say it simply sharpened awareness, a reminder that to be alive is itself a miracle suspended between dust and starlight. In those days, the drink was not for all. It moved between tribe and temple, between hearth and sacred stone. It accompanied marriages and oaths. It steadied warriors before battle and soothed mourners beside burial fires. It was offering and breath, currency and covenant. And yet, even in its reverence, mystery lingered. Stone carvings from ancient Mesoamerican cities, Olmec, Maya, later Aztec, depict figures holding vessels to their lips. Glyphs whisper of cacao as divine inheritance. In some tellings, the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl descended from celestial heights bearing cacao as a gift for humankind, a sacred seed stolen or bestowed from paradise. But beneath these myths, another question hums softly. Was cacao sacred because the gods delivered it? Or did humanity, in its longing for meaning, weave divinity around a humble tree. Beneath torchlit chambers where murals flickered against crumbling walls, priests traced the outlines of stars and calendars. They measured eclipses, they read omens in smoke, and always, somewhere nearby, cacao simmered, thick and dark, its surface trembling with faint ripples. It became more than drink, it became symbol. The bitterness mirrored life's trials, the foam symbolized breath, the dark hue echoed the fertile earth from which all things rise and to which all things return. In marketplaces, cacao beans passed from palm to palm as currency, small seeds carrying enormous weight. Yet even there, beneath barter and negotiation, the sacred echo remained. To hold a cacao bean was to hold something once lifted toward the sky, layers of meaning unfolded like petals in slow motion. Cacao as offering, cacao as sustenance, cacao as bridge. It existed in the space between the earthly and the unseen, like a gate half open at dawn. Where memory fades into myth, we find ruins now swallowed by vines, temples crumbled, staircases worn smooth by centuries of rain. The jungle has reclaimed much of what once stood in stone certainty. And yet the cacao tree still grows. Its white blossoms, delicate and almost hidden, emerge directly from trunk and branch, as if the tree itself refuses separation between root and bloom, fruit and foundation, earth and sky. There is something quietly sacred in this design. The pods, ridged and heavy, shift from green to gold to deep crimson. They hang like guarded secrets. Within each one, the seeds wait, unchanged in their essential nature, bitter, potential, silent. As the forest settles into night, as insects begin their rhythmic hymn and mist gathers once more upon broad leaves, we return to that solitary tree beneath the first dawn. No temple stands beside it now. No painted vessel rests at its roots. Only wind, only shadow, only the slow spiral of time turning unseen. Was it devotion that sanctified the drink? Or was it the human longing for something beyond dust and bone, a longing so deep it transformed bitterness into communion? Perhaps the gods were never separate from the seed. Perhaps divinity was always hidden in the act of noticing. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and so we leave the cacao tree standing in silhouette, its pods catching faint starlight like small buried suns. The canopy breathes above it. The soil holds its roots in patient embrace. The question remains suspended like mist in warm jungle air. Whether the gods created the drink, or whether humanity, in its yearning for the eternal, dreamed the gods into being and placed their memory gently within a bitter seed. Beneath the silence, the tree keeps its vigil, marked by the moon, guarded by shadow, waiting, as it always has, for the next pair of hands to lift its fruit with reverence. And somewhere, far away, in a quiet room where night has fully arrived, a cup of dark liquid cools beside a resting hand. The echo remains, soft, ancient, unfinished. In a chamber painted with ochre and shadow, where the walls are marked by spirals and star-shaped glyphs, a vessel rests upon a stone altar. The air is thick with incense. Copal smoke rises in pale ribbons, veiling the ceiling in a trembling haze. Torchlight flickers against carved reliefs of serpents and suns, their bodies forever coiled in silent motion. At the center of this sacred stillness stands a ruler. He does not smile. He does not speak. Before him, the cup waits, wide-mouthed, painted in mineral blues and deep earthen reds. Within it, a dark liquid gleams, almost oceanic in its depth. It carries the breath of roasted seeds and distant forests. Its surface trembles faintly, as though aware of the moment. It is said that this was no ordinary drink. The ruler lifts the vessel slowly, as one might raise an offering to the unseen, not in indulgence, not in hunger, but in ritual. And in that suspended instant, between hand and lip, a question echoes softly through the chamber of time. What power was believed to dwell within this bitter draught? In forgotten corners of Mesoamerica, among the Maya cities rising from jungle mist, and later beneath the vast ceremonial plazas of the Mexica, whom we now call the Aztecs, cacao was never merely comfort, it was threshold. It marked transition, it signaled invocation, it carried breath between realms. Priests moved like shadows along painted corridors. Their robes brushed against cool stone. They traced patterns in incense smoke, watching how it curled and thinned, reading omens in the spiral of rising air. Whispers tell us that cacao was consumed before sacred rites, before coronations, before war. Not for sweetness, but for awakening. The drink itself was thick and dark, whipped until foam blossomed upon its surface like a fleeting cloud marked by the moon. Chili was sometimes added, a spark of fire within shadow. Flowers, perhaps, crushed petals, fragrant herbs. It was poured from one vessel to another from great height, so that air would enter and transform it, so that foam would rise like celestial breath. The foam was precious. Some believe it symbolized life itself, ephemeral, delicate, sacred. In the courts of Maya kings, cacao was served in tall cylindrical vessels, each one adorned with glyphs naming its contents and its owner. Archaeologists have found traces of theobromine, cacao's quiet essence, lingering in the porous clay of crumbled cups buried for centuries beneath dust and vine. These cups were not placed casually in graves. They accompanied rulers into the afterlife. It is said that to drink cacao was to partake in something eternal, a gift carried across the veil. And yet beneath this sacred elevation lies an intriguing shadow. Cacao was not freely shared. It moved among elites, kings, nobles, priests. Warriors might earn it through valor. Merchants might trade for it at great cost. But for many it remained distant, veiled behind temple walls and palace gates. If it was divine, why was it guarded so carefully? Perhaps sacredness, in those ancient days, was intertwined with scarcity, or perhaps power has always sought to cradle divinity close to its own heart. In the Mexica capital of Tenochtitlan, a city rising like a mirage from the waters of Lake Texcoco, cacao beans were counted and stored like treasure. They served as currency, yes, but more than that, they served as symbol. Emperor Moctezuma II is said to have consumed cacao in abundance, served in golden cups that were discarded after a single use. Chroniclers from distant lands wrote of his preference for it before entering the company of his wives, believing it stirred vitality within him. Yet even these accounts, filtered through foreign eyes, feel half-veiled. For beneath the silence of temple courts, cacao carried another story, one woven with myth. It is said that long before kings raised cups in painted chambers, the feathered serpent Quetzalcoatl descended from celestial heights bearing cacao as a gift for humankind. Some believe he stole it from a paradise reserved only for gods. Others say he simply saw humanity's longing and answered it with compassion. In either telling, cacao becomes more than plant. It becomes rebellion wrapped in bitterness, forbidden knowledge, a seed that carries awareness. When Quetzalcoatl offered cacao to the people, jealous deities grew restless, for cacao did not intoxicate like fermented drink. It clarified. It sharpened the inward gaze. It reminded mortals of their own divine potential. And perhaps that was the true transgression. In sacred narratives, bitterness often precedes illumination. The first sip of cacao was not meant to delight the tongue. It was meant to steady the spirit, to prepare it, to open hidden chambers of the mind where visions flicker like distant stars. Some believe that priests consumed cacao before gazing into polished obsidian mirrors, those dark, reflective surfaces that seem to hold entire worlds within them. In the mirror's depth, they sought guidance. They sought alignment with celestial cycles and buried truths. The cacao warmed their breath. The smoke veiled their sight. And somewhere between bitterness and silence, revelation unfolded. But we must move gently here, for history itself is layered like sediment, myth resting upon memory, memory upon fragment. What we know is simple. Cacao was revered, it was restricted, it was ritual, and yet, even within its sanctity, longing stirred. Imagine a young attendant in the palace kitchens, grinding cacao seeds upon stone. The scent rises around her like sacred incense, yet she may never taste what she prepares. Her hands move in steady spiral motion, stone against stone, a quiet rhythm echoing ancient forests. Does she wonder what it feels like to drink the bitterness reserved for kings? Does she sense its sacredness in the weight of the paste beneath her palms? The contradiction lingers softly. If cacao was divine, why did divinity rest in so few cups? In hushed courtyards, scented with night blossoms, lovers may have shared it in secret, passing the vessel between them as moonlight silvered the rim. Warriors may have tasted it before stepping onto battlefields where dust rose like breath from the earth. Kings lifted it in ceremony, priests invoked it in chant, but always, always the cup returned to stillness, foam dissolving slowly, surface darkening, heat fading. Even sacred power is fleeting when held in human hands. As torchlight dims in that painted chamber of our beginning, the ruler lowers the vessel. A faint trace of foam clings to clay, incense thins into air, the chants soften into echo. Beneath the silence, the altar remains, the cup stands empty, and we are left with the image of bitterness transformed into ritual, of a seed once carried from forest canopy to temple heart, guarded and glorified, whispered about in myth and memory. Perhaps cacao was never meant to belong to kings alone. Perhaps sacredness cannot truly be contained. It moves like smoke between fingers. It settles in unexpected places. It waits in quiet hearts. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And so the chamber darkens. The painted serpents fade into shadow. The altar cools. The cup gathers dust. Yet somewhere, in the vast green hush of ancient forests, cacao pods still hang beneath leaves marked by the moon. Unaware of kings, unaware of priests, unaware of the titles once wrapped around their bitterness, they ripen slowly, they fall, they return to soil, and perhaps beneath the silence of time, the true power was never in the cup itself, but in the longing that lifted it toward the sky. Before metal sang against metal, before silver discs were stamped with the faces of emperors, before treasuries were sealed behind iron gates, there were seeds, small, dark, almost weightless in the palm. It is said that at dawn, when mist still clung to the edges of jungle leaves and the sky blushed with the first pale breath of sun, markets would awaken like slow, unfurling flowers. Woven mats were laid upon packed earth. Baskets, heavy with cacao pods, were arranged in careful rows. The air carried a fragrance both bitter and warm, roasted earth and distant rain. In that early light, before the noise of barter grew loud, there was a quiet moment of reverence. Seeds passed from palm to palm like fragments of night broken into pieces, each one smooth, oval, dark as polished stone. And yet these were no ordinary seeds. Whispers tell us that cacao had once been lifted toward the heavens in painted vessels, its foam trembling beneath torchlight in temple chambers. It had been offered to gods, shared in sacred rites, consumed before battle and before marriage vows. But here, in the gentle unfolding of the market, it had taken on another role. Here cacao was measure. A cloak might cost 100 beans, a rabbit perhaps 30. A promise, who can say? In forgotten corners of the earth, long before European coins crossed oceans, cacao beans served as currency among the Maya and later the Mexica. Archaeologists would one day uncover tribute lists carved into stone and recorded in painted codices, scrolls of bark paper marked with glyphs, counting sacks of beans owed to rulers like offerings of shadow. Yet let us not hurry into lists and numbers. Instead, imagine the rhythm, A trader arrives along a jungle path, sandals dusted with pale soil. He carries a woven sack over his shoulder, the beans inside shifting softly with each step. He has traveled beside rivers marked by the moon, through groves where parrots flash like living emeralds. Each bean in his sack is a possibility: nourishment, negotiation, survival. It is said that cacao moved along river veins and forest corridors the way blood moves through a living body, connecting distant cities, villages, temples. It tied coast to highland. It carried not only flavor, but trust. For currency is a form of faith. To accept a seed in exchange is to believe in its shared meaning. But here, beneath woven awnings and open sky, something delicate had shifted. The sacred seed, once cradled in ritual, now clinked together in handfuls, counted, weighed, exchanged. How did something once offered to gods become measure among mortals? Some believe that sacredness does not vanish when it changes form. It simply settles deeper, like water sinking into soil. Within temple chambers, priests still blessed the harvest. They lifted the first beans towards celestial signs painted upon ceilings. They whispered invocations over baskets before they were carried into the world. And in village courtyards, mothers knelt beside grinding stones, pressing cacao into paste for family meals. Children watched with wide, star-marked eyes as seeds transformed beneath rhythmic hands. The sacred and the ordinary entwined, inseparable as root and vine. Beneath the silence of daily life, divinity lingered in the mundane, yet humanity, as ever, carried both light and shadow. Some chronicles murmur of counterfeit beans, hollowed shells filled with dust or carved fragments of clay, shaped to resemble cacao, passed quickly in crowded markets, discovered too late. Even in reverence, there was deception. Even in sacred exchange, there was hunger. Perhaps this is inevitable when something divine becomes valuable. When seeds become currency, desire attaches itself like ivy. In the Mexica capital of Tenochtitlan, that luminous city rising from lake waters, tribute flowed in vast quantities of cacao beans. Provinces sent sacks of them as offerings to the imperial center. Warehouses brimmed with the dark harvest. And yet, beyond the palace walls, ordinary hands still felt their texture, still counted them carefully, still weighed decisions in units of seed and shadow. It is said that a turkey hen could be purchased for 200 beans, a tamale for one. The scale of life, sustenance and comfort, resting in small, unassuming ovals. Imagine the quiet gravity of this, a farmer standing at a stall, beans arranged in neat spirals before him. He exchanges them for tools, for cloth, for salt carried from distant shores. Each transaction a subtle acknowledgement that value is something agreed upon, not inherent. The bean itself remains unchanged. It does not know it is worth more today than yesterday. It does not know it once graced temple altars. It simply is. Beneath the silence, the cacao tree continues to flower in shaded groves. Its blossoms emerge directly from trunk and branch, pale and fragile. Its pods swell and ripen, marked by the sun. The tree does not measure itself, but humans do. And so the seed, once a sacred threshold, becomes also a ledger. Some believe this transformation diminished its spirit. Others say it expanded its reach. For what is more intimate than currency? It touches every hand. It enters every exchange. It weaves itself into the fabric of daily breath. In hushed moments at dusk, when markets close and woven baskets grow light, the beans are gathered back into sacks. The dust of the day settles slowly. A final trade is made, a final count. Twilight spills across the stalls like indigo dye. Barter fades into hush. And the question lingers, soft as smoke. When the divine becomes currency, does its spirit remain intact? Or does something sacred fracture under the weight of desire? Perhaps the answer is not one of loss or preservation, but of transformation. For even as cacao beans passed from palm to palm in negotiation, they still carried the memory of forest shadow. They still held the echo of grinding stones and whispered prayers. They still could become drink, thick and dark, lifted once more toward sky. In calloused hands the sacred did not vanish, it simply rested differently. Where memory fades into myth, we may imagine a single bean slipping from a trader's grasp, falling unnoticed into dust. It lies there as footsteps pass, as bargains are struck, as laughter and argument rise and fall like tide. Night deepens, the market empties, stars appear above, distant, patient, celestial. The bean remains upon the ground, marked by the moon, and in that small, unremarkable form lies the entire story. Seed of gods, measure of wealth, token of trust, object of deceit, suspended between devotion and desire. Perhaps it was never meant to remain untouched by human longing. Perhaps sacredness, once placed in human hands, must always pass through shadow before returning to light. As twilight becomes night and silence folds gently over the earth, the seeds rest in woven sacks beside sleeping families. They rest in temple storehouses. They rest in forgotten corners of the market floor. Their value shimmers uncertainly in the half-light. And somewhere, beneath the vast green canopy where the first cacao tree once stood in vigil, new pods ripen without knowledge of markets or empires. They grow in quiet spirals. They fall when ready. They return to soil. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And perhaps, if we listen closely, we may hear the faintest whisper beneath the silence, not of wealth, nor barter, nor tribute, but of a seed that once held the breath of the divine, now cradled in mortal hands, waiting patiently for whatever meaning we choose to give it next. A wooden ship moves through a silvered ocean. Its hull groans softly, as though remembering forests from which it was carved. Its sails, pale and swollen with wind, billow like ghostly lungs drawing breath from the night. The sea stretches outward in every direction, vast, indifferent, swallowing starlight whole. Above, constellations shimmer like scattered salt upon velvet. Below, the water is dark and oceanic, veiled in shifting shadow. In the hold of this vessel, beneath coiled ropes and creaking beams, lie sacks of cacao. Small seeds gathered from distant groves where parrots once sang at dusk, where mist clung to broad leaves, where elders moved softly between roots and sacred stone. Now they travel far from that humid cradle. It is said that when something sacred crosses an ocean, it becomes something else. The ship presses forward, marked by the moon. The wind carries not only salt and spray, but unspoken hunger, the hunger of empire, of curiosity, of expansion beyond familiar shores. What happens when a sacred seed enters foreign breath? Beneath the silence of the hold, the cacao rests in darkness, each bean a fragment of night, each one carrying memory of jungle heat, of temple chant, of foam blooming in painted vessels. But here, there are no priests, no incense, no spiral glyphs etched in stone, only wood, only rope, only the steady rhythm of waves striking hull. Some believe that the first Europeans who encountered cacao did not immediately understand what they held. Christopher Columbus is said to have glimpsed cacao beans in the early 16th century, observing their curious value among the people he met. Later, Hernán Cortés would carry them across the Atlantic, along with stories of emperors and rituals. Yet the seeds themselves spoke no language he could fully hear. They arrived not as sacred offering, but as curiosity. When the ship finally touches European shore, perhaps in Seville, perhaps in another port lined with stone, the air feels different, cooler, drier, laced with unfamiliar scents. Monks and courtiers gather in candlelit rooms of stone and echo. Thick walls keep out wind. Tapestries soften sound. The sacks are opened. Cacao pods are lifted into pale hands. Whispers tell us that the first inhalation was cautious. The scent, earthy, bitter, almost medicinal, did not resemble honey or wine. It was darker than expected, less welcoming. The seeds are roasted, ground, mixed with water. The drink that emerges is thick and austere. No sugar yet softens its edge, no cinnamon warms its depth. It is served in cups unfamiliar with its shadow. At first sip, brows furrow. It is said that some deemed it harsh, strange, even unpleasant. And yet, something in its darkness calls softly. Perhaps it was the weight of it, the way it lingered upon the tongue like a secret. Perhaps it was the faint stirring it awakened beneath the ribs, subtle, yet insistent. The drink that had once steadied warriors and accompanied sacred rites now sits upon wooden tables beneath vaulted ceilings. Its foam, if it rises at all, feels fragile in this new air. Across continents, meanings shift like tides. Sugar is added, the bitterness yields, cinnamon follows, fragrant, warming, familiar to European palate. Vanilla, too, travelling its own journey from orchid vine to distant shore. The drink transforms slowly, like dusk deepening into night. Some believe that in monasteries, cacao found its earliest refuge. Within cloisters where bells marked the hour and candles flickered against ancient stone, monks debated its nature. Did it break a fast? Was it nourishment or indulgence? Did its liquid form allow it passage through sacred rules? In those hushed corridors, chocolate, for it would begin to be called thus, simmered gently in copper pots. Its surface glowed in firelight. Steam curled upward like incense seeking heaven. It is said that in those moments the sacred and the uncertain intertwined. Does altering the sacred seed alter its spirit? If bitterness is softened, is divinity diminished? Or does transformation reveal another facet of its nature? In the courts of Spain and later France, chocolate becomes a luxury. It is poured into porcelain cups, painted with delicate flowers. It is served in salons veiled in velvet and gold. The once ritual drink now accompanies whispered politics, flirtation, and refined conversation. Ladies in silk lift the cup to their lips. Gentlemen discuss trade and empire over its fragrant steam. The drink of gods becomes the indulgence of nobility. Yet beneath the splendor lies a hush of contradiction. For each cup poured in porcelain, unseen labor stirs in distant fields. The cacao tree still grows beneath equatorial sun. Hands still harvest pods beneath humid canopy. The seeds still ferment in woven baskets, dry upon mats, travel in sacks. But now their journey is bound not only to ritual, but to commerce. It is said that every voyage reshapes what it carries. Cacao, once sacred threshold in Mesoamerican temples, now passes through sugar plantations and merchant fleets. Its bitterness becomes commodity. Its transformation mirrors the shifting tides of a world expanding, sometimes gently, often not. And yet, let us remain in stillness. Let us imagine one quiet evening in a Spanish monastery. A monk sits alone in a stone chamber marked by candlelight. Before him rests a cup of chocolate, thick, sweetened, faintly spiced. He lifts it slowly. Steam rises, veiling his vision for a moment. Does he know the forest from which these seeds came? The glyphs once painted upon vessels? The priests who poured cacao from height to summon foam like celestial breath? Perhaps not. And yet, as he sips, he closes his eyes. In that inward pause, something ancient stirs. Not in knowledge, but in sensation. A depth, a warmth, a lingering echo of shadow. Beneath the silence, the seed remembers. Across continents, cacao becomes embedded in culture. In Italy, it is infused with fragrance. In France, it is refined. In England, chocolate houses emerge, gathering places for thinkers and traders alike. The drink evolves. It becomes sweeter, smoother, more accessible. But within each transformation lies a subtle question. What remains unchanged? Perhaps sacredness does not reside solely in origin, nor solely in ritual. Perhaps it lives in continuity, in the thread that runs from jungle canopy to ocean crossing to candlelit chamber. The sea, after all, does not judge what it carries. The ship that once cut through silvered water has long faded into horizon mist. Its sails are dust now. Its crew returned to Earth, but the voyage it enacted continues to echo. The ocean's steady breath reminds us that exchange is never neutral, that every crossing reshapes both traveler and shore. As night deepens over that vast sea, stars shimmer once more upon its surface. The waves swallow their reflections as they did centuries ago. Somewhere, in a quiet room far from the forest of origin, a cup of chocolate rests upon a polished table. It gleams softly in candlelight. Its sweetness comforts, its bitterness whispers faintly beneath. Perhaps it was never meant to remain unchanged. Perhaps sacred seeds are meant to travel, to pass through shadow, through sugar, through silk and stone, carrying memory in ways unseen. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And if we listen now, as sleep approaches like a gentle tide, we may hear the faintest murmur beneath the silence, not of conquest, not of empire, but of a seed that crossed a veiled sea, and in doing so became both something new and something eternal. The ocean breathes, the cup cools, the voyage continues, not upon water now, but within memory, drifting softly toward dream. There is a monastery hidden among winter hills, where stone walls rise from the earth like ancient ribs, and the wind moves through narrow arches with a voice that sounds almost like memory. It is said that if you arrive before dawn, when frost still clings to the grass and the sky is pale as unmarked parchment, you will see a single window lit by candle flame. Behind that window, within walls cool as twilight, monks move in measured rhythm. Their sandals brush softly against worn stone. Their robes whisper like turning pages. Their breath rises in faint clouds in the early chill. And somewhere within the cloister, in a copper pot suspended above low flame, chocolate simmers. The steam lifts in gentle spirals, veiled and fragrant. It carries with it a scent both ancient and new, bitter earth softened by honey, dark seed tempered by cane. And so the question unfolds, not loudly, but like a candle flame widening in quiet air. Can sweetness become a form of prayer? Beneath the silence of these sacred halls, cacao has found refuge. Once it was lifted toward jungle skies in painted vessels, its foam trembling beneath torchlight. Once it steadied warriors and marked royal rites. Now it rests in cloisters of stone and echo, poured into humble cups by hands calloused not by battle, but by contemplation. It is said that in the early years of its arrival in Europe, chocolate entered monasteries as both curiosity and companion. The monks, scholars of scripture, guardians of scroll and hymn, approached it cautiously. Does it break the fast? Does it stir indulgence? Or does it nourish without sin? In forgotten corridors lined with manuscripts and candle soot, debates murmured like distant rivers. Some believed the drink to be sustenance, a liquid bread, sustaining weary bodies during long hours of prayer. It warmed the chest. It steadied the limbs weakened by winter and fasting. Others sensed temptation lingering in its velvet depth. Sweetness, after all, has always carried ambiguity. In the refectory, beneath wooden beams darkened by centuries of smoke, a brother pours chocolate into simple clay cups. The liquid gleams softly in firelight, its surface smooth as polished obsidian. He carries the cups in silence. Outside, winter presses against stained glass. Snow gathers upon the cloister garden. The world beyond these walls feels distant, muffled, veiled, almost forgotten. Inside, the drink offers a quiet ember of comfort. Steam curls upward like incense. It weaves through air thick with beeswax and parchment. It brushes against frescoes painted in faded blues and golds, saints with lowered eyes, halos like celestial rings. A monk lifts the cup. His fingers, ink-stained and steady, cradle its warmth. It is said that when he sips, he does not taste only sweetness. He tastes memory, though he may not know its origin. The bitterness remains beneath the honey, subtle and grounding. It echoes faintly of forests he has never seen, of parrots flashing green against humid sky, of temple stones marked by spirals and dust. Beneath the silence, the seed remembers. Chocolate becomes companion to contemplation. It warms hands that turn fragile pages. It steadies eyes tracing ancient script. In the scriptorium, where quills scratch gently against parchment, a small cup rests beside illuminated scrolls. Gold leaf glints in candlelight, ink pools in careful strokes. The monk pauses, lifting the cup once more. In that moment, sweetness and scripture intertwine. Is this indulgence, or is it gratitude? Some believe that within these walls, cacao's transformation was not erasure, but translation. The bitterness once revered in jungle temples softens beneath honey and cane, but its essence remains. Its darkness still holds depth. Its warmth still gathers breath inward. Yet even in devotion, a subtle tension lingers. For beyond these cloistered hills, cacao's journey is unfolding in other ways, across plantations and merchant ships, through markets and empires shifting like tides. The monks do not dwell on this. Their world is bounded by prayer, by bell, by season, but somewhere in distant lands, hands harvest pods beneath equatorial sun, seeds ferment in woven baskets, labor moves beneath vast skies. Here, in sweetened silence, the connection feels veiled. It is said that sacred objects carry both solace and shadow. In the chapel, candles tremble beside manuscripts older than memory. Chant rises and falls like oceanic breath. The monks kneel in rows, voices blending into a low, celestial hum. After prayer, they return to the warmth of chocolate, not as luxury, not as spectacle, but as quiet sustenance. The copper pot rests upon embers. The surface of the drink ripples gently as it is stirred, a slow spiral echoing the ancient grinding stones of distant forests. Does altering the sacred seed alter its spirit? This question lingers like incense in the rafters. Perhaps sacredness is not fixed to form. Perhaps it is carried through intention. If a priest once lifted cacao toward jungle sky in invocation, and now a monk lifts sweetened chocolate toward his lips in gratitude, is the gesture so different? In both, there is pause. In both, there is awareness. In both, there is breath. It is said that the first sip in winter feels like warmth returning to frozen earth. The sweetness spreads slowly, not overwhelming but enveloping. Beneath it, the bitterness grounds the experience, a reminder that comfort and austerity coexist. The monks sit in thoughtful stillness. Snow falls beyond the walls. Time moves gently, marked by the tolling of bells. And yet, beneath the stillness, the larger world turns. Empires expand, trade routes stretch across veiled seas. Cacao becomes increasingly entwined with wealth and power. Within these stone walls, however, it remains something simpler. A cup, a pause, a warmth in cold season, but even simplicity carries complexity. Is this transformation an honoring of cacao's sacred past, or a gentle forgetting? The monks may never know the full story of the seed in their cup. They may not imagine the painted vessels of Maya courts or the glyph-marked scrolls of Mexica tribute. They may not sense the paradox of sweetness born from bitter origins, yet perhaps they do not need to. For in this monastery, sweetness becomes discipline rather than excess. It becomes rhythm rather than indulgence. It is measured, mindful, woven into sacred routine. And as night deepens, as candles burn lower and shadows lengthen across stone, the final bell tolls. The brothers gather once more in quiet hall. A final cup is poured. The surface of the chocolate is dark and luminous, marked by the moonlight filtering through stained glass. One monk stirs it gently. A single ripple forms. It widens slowly across the surface, expanding, softening, then fading. The ripple leaves no trace, only a smooth, dark mirror reflecting candle flame, like a question offered to the night and left unanswered. perhaps sweetness can become prayer. Perhaps sacredness is not lost in transformation, but reshaped, veiled in new forms, carried into new spaces. Beneath the silence, the seed endures. And as sleep approaches like gentle snowfall, the monastery settles into stillness. The copper pot cools, the cups rest empty upon wooden tables worn smooth by centuries of touch. Outside, winter wind moves across stone. Inside, warmth lingers faintly in memory. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And perhaps, somewhere between bitterness and honey, between jungle canopy and cloister wall, the sacred continues to breathe. Quiet, veiled, and marked by the moon. Before the sun lifts its full weight above the horizon, there is a moment in the gardens when the world feels suspended. Dawn has not yet broken. The air is cool, almost tender. Dew clings to the leaves like breath upon glass. In ordered rows stretching toward a pale sky, cacao trees stand in quiet formation. Their trunks rise from soil, cracked by relentless seasons, their branches heavy with pods shaped like lanterns carved from gold and shadow. It is said that if one walks these groves before the labor begins, one might hear only the soft rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of awakening birds. The earth holds its breath. The trees, unaware of destiny, shimmer faintly in the half-light. And yet, beneath this stillness, history hums. What price was hidden within chocolate's rising sweetness? In forgotten corners of the world, in lands far from the forests where cacao first grew wild, the sacred seed was planted anew. Not in scattered groves beneath tangled canopy, but in precise lines beneath open sky. The transformation was subtle at first, a seed placed into soil, a sapling nurtured, a harvest anticipated. But beneath the silence, something vast was shifting. The demand for chocolate had begun to echo across continents. In European courts and salons, porcelain cups filled with dark liquid sweetened by sugar and spice. Laughter drifted like perfume beneath chandeliers, silk sleeves brushed against polished tables. Few there imagined the groves from which their indulgence flowed. Here, in these sun-drenched colonies, cacao became harvest for empire. The trees grew obediently in rows, their blossoms pale and delicate, small white flowers emerging directly from trunk and branch. They bloomed without knowledge of markets or crowns, without awareness of ships waiting at distant ports. It is said that nature remains indifferent to human ambition. The tree flowers, the pod swells, the fruit ripens, but human systems gather around it like shadow at dusk. As the sun rises higher, light spills across the fields. Workers move between rows, their hands brushing leaves still marked by the moon's fading glow. They carry woven baskets. They cut pods from trunks with careful blades. The sound is rhythmic, measured. A pod falls softly into waiting palms. Inside, pale pulp cradles dark seeds, seeds that once traveled through sacred ritual and whispered myth, now counted and weighed as yield. Whispers tell us that these gardens were shaped not by devotion, but by distant desire. In lands such as São Tomé, in the Caribbean, in Brazil, cacao plantations expanded beneath colonial rule. Forests were cleared. Groves were arranged in geometric obedience. The sacred seed, once gathered from shaded undergrowth, now stood exposed beneath wide skies. The transformation felt quiet, yet immense. From forest ritual to global commodity, from temple offering to market calculation. Ships waited at harbors heavy with promise. Their hulls would carry sacks of beans across oceanic distances toward ports where merchants negotiated in ledgers and coin. The journey from grove to salon was long and veiled. In the salons of Paris or Madrid, chocolate was poured into delicate cups. Sugar softened its edge, cream lightened its depth. It became velvet upon the tongue, but beneath each polished cup lay unseen toil, hands stained with pulp and dust, backs bent beneath tropical sun, breath drawn in humid heat. The narrative does not raise its voice here. It does not cry out, it simply observes. For history often moves in quiet layers. It is said that the wealth generated by cacao plantations shimmered like gold in European accounts. Trade routes spiraled outward, demand increased. The seed once whispered to gods became woven into systems of shadow and profit. And yet the tree itself continued to bloom. In the stillness before dawn, when dew gathered and birds called faintly from distant branches, the cacao flowers opened with fragile grace. They were almost star-marked in their delicacy, small, easily overlooked, yet luminous in their design. Nature did not alter its rhythm for empire. The blossoms did not know they fed markets across veiled seas. The pods did not understand the weight of gold attached to their harvest. They simply followed their cycle, ripening, falling, returning. There is something haunting in this contrast. The sacred seed, once lifted towards sky in ritual chambers, now traveled in bulk across oceans. Its bitterness softened into sweetness in distant kitchens. Its value measured not in reverence, but in revenue. And still, beneath the silence, the old memory remained. Some believe that sacredness cannot be fully erased, even when reshaped by systems of trade. For within each bean rests the echo of forest shadow, the faint imprint of myth, the spiral motion of grinding stones and whispered chant. Even when planted in ordered rows beneath relentless sun, the seed carries ancient memory. Workers move through the groves as afternoon heat thickens the air. Their footsteps leave patterns in dust. The scent of fermenting cacao rises from open pods left to rest in heaps. The scene is neither loud nor chaotic. It is steady, repetitive, almost ritualistic in its own way. Harvest, fermentation, drying, shipment, a new ceremony shaped by economy rather than devotion. And yet, one might ask, is ritual defined only by its intention? If hands move daily in the same rhythm, if seeds are gathered with care, if cycles are honored even within labor, does some quiet sacredness persist? Or has something been lost beneath the weight of gold? The contradiction rests gently within the narrative, for even as cacao fed systems of exploitation and wealth accumulation, it also carried warmth into homes. It comforted the sick, it sustained the weary, it became companion to conversation and solace in winter. Bitterness and sweetness coexisted upon the same branch. As afternoon light softens and shadows lengthen between the rows, the groves exhale. Leaves rustle in evening wind. Workers depart slowly, baskets emptied into storage houses. The earth cools. Dusk settles over the gardens like a veil. It is said that in twilight, when the sky turns indigo and the first star appears, the groves feel almost ancient again. The geometry of rows fades into shadow. The trees blur into silhouette. For a moment, one might imagine they stand once more in wild forest, untouched by ledger or law. But history cannot be undone so easily. The legacy of these gardens lingers, in wealth accumulated, in lives altered, in landscapes reshaped. It lingers in the global story of chocolate, sweet upon the tongue and shadowed in origin. And yet beneath it all, the cacao tree continues its quiet cycle, blossom, pod, seed, unaware of markets, unaware of crowns, unaware of gold. As night deepens, leaves shimmer faintly beneath moonlight. The groves are marked by the moon, silvered and still. Crickets begin their gentle hymn. The air cools into something almost sacred. In that stillness, the question returns softly. What price was hidden within chocolate's rising sweetness? Perhaps it was never meant to be answered plainly. Perhaps sweetness and shadow have always traveled together, two threads woven through human longing, bitterness and gold upon the same branch, sacred seed and global desire entwined. The earth keeps its secrets close. And as sleep approaches like dusk across the fields, we leave the gardens where bitterness turned to gold, not with judgment, but with awareness. For beneath the silence of every sweet cup rests a story of soil and sun, of shadow and light. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And tonight, in the hush between waking and dream, the groves rustle softly, carrying their story on evening wind. There is a room where mirrors hold more than reflections. Candles tremble against gilded frames, their flames multiplying into endless corridors of light. Crystal chandeliers hang like inverted constellations, scattering brilliance across walls draped in velvet, the color of midnight wine. Porcelain cups rest upon delicate saucers, thin as whispered promises, and between two figures seated close together, steam rises from a dark liquid, curling upward like a ghostly veil. It is said that in such rooms, history changed its shape in hushed tones. But let us not hurry. Let us enter slowly. In forgotten corners of 18th century Europe, salons emerged as sanctuaries of thought. Drawing rooms in Paris, Vienna, Madrid, spaces where philosophers, poets, diplomats and dreamers gathered beneath chandeliers to exchange ideas as one might exchange rare coins. Outside, carriages rolled along cobbled streets. Inside, velvet absorbed the sound of footsteps. Laughter drifted lightly, perfumed with amber and wax, and on polished tables, chocolate waited. No longer thick and spiced as in jungle temples, no longer debated in cloistered monasteries. Here it had become refined, perfumed with vanilla, softened with sugar, sometimes enriched with cream. It shimmered in porcelain cups, painted with delicate florals and star-marked crests. It is said that the first sip in such a room felt both indulgent and intimate. The warmth spread gently through gloved hands. The bitterness lingered faintly beneath sweetness. The aroma carried a depth not easily named. Steam rose between faces deep in conversation, blurring features for a breath, then clearing again. In this ephemeral veil, ideas moved. Chocolate accompanied philosophy. It stood quietly beside discussions of liberty and reason, of rights and revolutions. Beneath chandeliers of crystal light, words unfurled like scrolls unrolled across polished wood. Voltaire is said to have favored chocolate, consuming it with devotion bordering on ritual. In Parisian salons, the drink became companion to Enlightenment thought, fueling discourse that would ripple outward into the architecture of nations. But let us remain in atmosphere rather than chronology. Imagine a woman seated at the head of the room, a salonière, her gown sweeping like soft tide across the floor. She orchestrates conversation with gentle precision. Around her, thinkers lean forward, eyes bright, hands cradling porcelain warmth. The chocolate glows darkly in candlelight. It is both indulgence and inspiration, comfort and catalyst. And somewhere within its sweetness does the spirit of cacao still murmur. Whispers tell us that every substance carries memory. The seed that once hung beneath humid canopy now rests in cups beside leather-bound volumes. The foam once offered to gods has dissolved into velvety smoothness beneath refined sugar. Yet beneath the silence, the ancient echo persists. As voices rise and fall like oceanic tide, the cup remains a silent witness. A philosopher gestures toward the window where moonlight glances off glass. A poet recites verses that spiral like incense smoke. A diplomat lowers his voice, speaking of treaties and tremors in distant lands. Ideas bloom like midnight flowers, and chocolate, warm and steady, accompanies them. It is said that revolutions sometimes begin not in thunder, but in murmur. In these salons, the seeds of change were planted gently, in thought, in conversation, in the exchange of perspectives. Chocolate did not ignite these sparks, but it warmed the hands that held them. The drink, carried across oceans and centuries, absorbed each new meaning like dye upon cloth. From sacred offering to royal indulgence, from monastic sustenance to intellectual companion. Every era reshaped what it inherited. Outside the salon, the world moved with quieter struggles. Trade routes extended across veiled seas, colonies harvested cacao beneath relentless sun. Labor continued in distant groves where trees bloomed without awareness of velvet evenings. Yet within these mirrored walls, sweetness prevailed. Does transformation erase origin, or does it lay a new meaning upon old memory? A scholar lifts his cup and pauses. The surface of the chocolate reflects candlelight like small captive stars. He gazes into it briefly, perhaps absent-mindedly, but in that dark mirror lies a history he does not fully see. The jungle canopy, the temple altar, the grinding stone, the plantation row, all converge in this quiet sip. It is said that objects often become vessels for more than their makers intend. Chocolate here is no longer ritual in the ancient sense. No glyph marks its cup, no priest blesses its foam, yet in its warmth it fosters intimacy. In its depth it invites pause. Between one argument and the next, silence settles for a moment. Someone leans back, someone smiles faintly, someone stares into the fire, lost in thought. The pacing slows. Outside, night deepens. The moon rises higher, marked by faint clouds. Its light filters through window panes, fracturing across mirrored walls. Inside, the final cups are poured. Conversation softens into reflection. It is said that as the Enlightenment unfolded, as revolutions stirred in France and beyond, chocolate continued to be served in salons and courts alike, a quiet constant amidst upheaval. The drink did not choose sides. It did not declare allegiance. It remained warm, dark, and steady. Perhaps that is its quiet power, not in commanding attention, but in sustaining presence. As the final candle dims, wax pooling at its base, guests begin to depart. Velvet rustles, doors close softly, footsteps echo briefly in hallways lined with portraits of ancestors gazing down in silent witness. On a small table near the window, a cup remains half full. The chocolate within has cooled slightly, its surface now smooth and reflective. In that dark mirror, the fractured moon appears, a crescent broken by the angle of glass. The reflection trembles as a faint breeze moves the curtain. Within every sweetness rests an echo of its darker, sacred beginning. The cup does not speak, it does not announce its lineage. But beneath its polished porcelain lies a story spanning forests, oceans, monasteries, plantations, and palaces. Perhaps it was never meant to be found in one place alone. Perhaps sacred seeds are meant to travel, to inhabit temples and salons alike, absorbing the breath of each era. As the room empties fully and silence settles like dust upon velvet, the moonlight lingers upon the cup. No voices now, no laughter, only the faint ticking of a distant clock. The chocolate remains, dark, reflective, patient. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. And if we listen now, in the quiet space between waking and dream, we may hear the faintest murmur beneath the sweetness, not of revolution, not of philosophy, but of a tree once standing beneath first dawn, its pods catching starlight in humid air. The salon fades. The candles extinguish. The velvet absorbs the last warmth of evening, and the cup, reflecting fractured moonlight, waits in silence, carrying within it both indulgence and origin, both refinement and root. As sleep approaches, the reflection softens. The moon dissolves into shadow, and somewhere far beyond mirrored walls, the cacao tree continues to bloom beneath ancient sky. There is a building of iron and brick, where the sky seems lower than elsewhere. Its windows are tall and arched, yet the light that filters through them feels subdued, as though even the sun must pass through a veil before entering. Above, vast iron beams cross like the ribs of some mechanical cathedral. Beneath them, shadows stretch long across stone floors dusted with cocoa powder. It is said that if you stand very still inside such a place, you can hear a rhythm not unlike breathing, not the breath of forest, not the breath of ocean, but something steadier, measured, repetitive. Beans tumble like rain into waiting gears. The sound is soft at first, a gentle cascade of dark seeds slipping from burlap sacks into metal funnels. They fall in steady streams, striking iron with a muted echo. The air hums, but not harshly. It hums like distant wind, moving through unseen corridors. Cacao has entered a new realm. Under iron skies, beneath echoing roofs, the sacred seed meets machinery for the first time. It is said that the Industrial Revolution altered not only landscapes but meanings. In the 19th century, innovations in grinding, pressing and molding transformed chocolate from a drink into something solid, portable, shareable. The stone metate of ancient hands became steel roller. The spiral rhythm of human palms became the turning of gears. And yet, let us move slowly. Inside the factory, roasted beans pass through crushers. Their shells fall away like fragile husks of memory. The nibs, dark and fragrant, move along belts in quiet procession. They are ground into thick paste, pressed to separate butter from solids, recombined and refined in gleaming vats. The air carries a scent both bitter and sweet. It lingers upon skin and cloth. It drifts upward to meet the iron rafters where dust dances in thin beams of light. It is said that even industry, when observed without haste, possesses a kind of ritual. There is repetition, there is order, there is transformation. Chocolate transforms again, no longer only beverage in porcelain cup, no longer thick brew poured from height to summon foam. Now it is molded into bars and shapes, rectangles and coins, delicate curls and stamped emblems. It is wrapped in paper and promise. Children taste what kings once guarded. In forgotten corners of crowded cities, small hands unwrap thin silver foil. Eyes widen, teeth press gently into smooth surface. Sweetness spreads across tongues that have never known temple altar or velvet salon. The sacred seed dissolves into everyday comfort, and something beautiful resides in that. What was once restricted to elites now rests in pockets and lunch tins. It travels in satchels and across continents in crates stacked high upon steamships. It is sold in shop windows, lit by gas lamps and later by electric glow. Chocolate becomes companion to ordinary joy. Yet beneath this democratization, something subtle shifts. The ritual of grinding stone and whispered chant fades into distant memory. The priest's invocation and the monk's quiet debate dissolve beneath the hum of assembly lines. Uniformity rises, efficiency, precision measured not in reverence, but in output. The bars emerge identical, their surfaces smooth as polished obsidian, their edges exact. They are stamped with logos and wrapped in branded color. They promise consistency, the same taste each time, no matter the hand that holds them. Is something lost in this metamorphosis, or is it merely transformed again? Beneath iron skies, workers move with steady hands, aprons dusted with cocoa powder, sleeves rolled back. They guide molds along conveyors. They inspect surfaces for flaw or crack. Their gestures, though shaped by industry, retain a quiet humanity. During brief pauses, one may break a fragment from a cooling tray, a taste, a moment of warmth amidst machinery. For a heartbeat, the hum recedes. The sweetness spreads slowly, and beneath it, a faint bitterness lingers, grounding, ancient. Within each bar lies the echo of rainforest breath, the ghost of torchlit chambers, the memory of ships crossing veiled seas. Some believe that sacredness can endure even within mass creation, though it may become veiled, buried beneath layers of branding and commerce. It is said that early chocolate manufacturers spoke of purity and refinement as though invoking a new form of alchemy. Machines did not merely produce, they perfected. They smoothed texture until it melted effortlessly upon the tongue. Conching, a long, patient mixing process developed in the late 19th century, became almost meditative in its duration. For hours, sometimes days, chocolate turned and turned within heated troughs, its particles growing finer, its bitterness softening. There is something almost monastic in that extended motion, a spiral within steel walls. Beneath the silence of night shifts, as lamps cast pale halos across factory floors, the chocolate continues its slow transformation. Workers move like shadows between machines. Outside, smokestacks rise against dark sky, releasing faint plumes into moonlit air. Iron and steam replace canopy and incense. And yet, the seed endures. It is said that history does not vanish. It layers. Within each industrial bar resides centuries of passage. Forest to altar, altar to ship, ship to cloister, cloister to salon, salon to factory. Each era leaves its imprint like faint glyph beneath fresh paint. Can mass creation carry ancient spirit? The question hums like distant machinery. Perhaps spirit does not depend on scarcity. Perhaps it resides in memory, in awareness of origin. Imagine a worker at the end of his shift. He stands near an open window where twilight enters gently. He holds a finished bar in his hand. Its surface gleams softly in fading light. He may not know the myth of Quetzalcoatl or the debate of fasting monks. He may not imagine velvet salons or colonial groves. But when he breaks a piece and tastes it, something ancient stirs nonetheless. Not in knowledge, but in sensation. Warmth, depth, bitterness beneath sweetness. For a moment, the machinery seems to hush. The heartbeat of history pulses faintly beneath the clatter. As evening settles fully, the factory empties. Footsteps fade, doors close with muted echo. The iron beams remain, vast and silent beneath darkened roof. On a wooden table near the center of the room, a single bar rests. Its wrapper has been folded back. Its surface catches the last ember of daylight filtering through high windows. Dust floats slowly around it, illuminated like tiny star-marked particles suspended in air. The bar holds within it centuries of transformation. Forest ritual, imperial trade, monastic contemplation, salon conversation, industrial innovation, bitterness and sweetness pressed into solid form. Perhaps it was never meant to remain one thing. Perhaps sacred seeds must pass through fire and iron, through chant and clatter, in order to reveal their many faces. Outside, the sky darkens to deep indigo. Stars emerge faintly beyond smokestacks. The factory stands quiet beneath iron skies, marked by the moon. The bar remains upon the table, unmoving, reflective, patient. Beneath the silence it carries an echo, and as sleep approaches like gentle dusk settling over steel and stone, we leave it there, resting in half-light, holding within its smooth surface the breath of rainforest and the rhythm of machines. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Tonight, beneath iron beams and distant stars, the ancient seed continues its quiet journey, not erased, but reshaped, waiting to melt once more upon a human tongue. There is a courtyard where the stones still hold the warmth of the day. The walls rise gently around it, pale and weathered, their surfaces crumbled in places by years of sun and rain. Above, the sky opens wide, a dark, velvet canopy scattered with star-marked light. In the center of the courtyard, a small flame trembles. Its glow is soft, oceanic in its quiet pulse. Shadows move slowly across the ground, stretching and retreating like breath. Beside the flame sits a simple pot. Steam rises from it in delicate spirals, veiled and fragrant. The scent drifts upward into cool night air, deep, bitter, faintly sweet. It carries memory, though no one present may know from where. It is said that beyond commerce and empire, beyond salons and factories, chocolate always finds its way back to the hearth. Two figures sit close beside the flame. Perhaps they are lovers, perhaps siblings, perhaps an elder and a child listening to stories. Their silhouettes are gentle against the stone. One stirs the pot slowly with a wooden spoon, tracing circles that echo ancient motions. The liquid inside shifts and glows in firelight. Here, chocolate is intimate again, neither royal nor industrial, neither debated in cloisters nor moulded beneath iron skies. It is simply shared. The spoon pauses. Foam gathers faintly upon the surface, not as high as in painted temple vessels, not as polished as in porcelain cups, but enough to shimmer in the low flame. The drink is poured into humble cups, clay or tin, perhaps chipped at the rim. Hands cradle warmth. It is said that in such quiet courtyards, history feels closer to the ground. The act of stirring, the waiting for heat to settle, the lifting of cup toward lips. These gestures are older than empires. Even without knowledge of sacred groves or veiled seas, those who sip partake in a lineage of wonder. Whispers tell us that rituals do not vanish, they evolve. The priest who once poured cacao from height to summon foam, the monk who stirred sweetness into bitterness within stone walls, the worker who tasted a fragment beneath iron beams. All are echoed here in the simple circle of spoon against pot. The two figures speak softly, words drift upward like smoke, fragments of the day, of memory, of longing, a confession offered quietly, a worry eased by listening, a lullaby hummed beneath breath. Chocolate accompanies them not as spectacle but as presence. It is said that flavor can awaken what language cannot name. The bitterness balanced with sweetness mirrors the human heart, sorrow and comfort intertwined. The warmth spreads slowly through the chest, settling where unease once lingered. The courtyard holds their voices gently. Beyond the walls, distant streets may hum with unseen movement. But here, within this small sacred space, time softens. In forgotten corners of the earth, similar courtyards exist. In Spanish villages where night air cools terracotta tiles, in Latin American towns where jasmine blooms beneath moonlight, in city apartments where balconies open toward scattered stars. Chocolate has entered homes in countless forms, hot and thick, sweet and light, spiced with cinnamon, dark and austere, and in each variation it binds memory to taste. A grandmother passes down her method, a pinch of salt, a certain way of whisking. A father teaches a child to wait patiently for the first bubble at the edge of the pot. A solitary figure stirs alone, listening to the gentle sound of liquid touching metal. These small acts are rituals disguised as habit. It is said that history lingers not only in monuments and scrolls, but in quiet repetition. The courtyard flame flickers lower. Stars brighten overhead. One of the figures leans back, gazing upward at constellations. The cup rests between warm palms. Steam curls toward sky like a silent offering. Does the spirit of cacao still murmur beneath layers of sweetness? Perhaps it does, though faintly. In the warmth between hands on a cool night, in the pause between words, in the comfort that spreads slowly and without demand. The mystery here is not grand. It does not reside in temples or factories, nor in trade routes or treaties. It resides in small moments, in the way bitterness softens when shared, in the way sweetness feels different when sipped alone versus together. It is said that human connection transforms even the simplest substance into something sacred. The chocolate in this courtyard is no longer commodity or currency. It is thread, weaving one heart to another. The spoon rests now at the bottom of the pot. Only a faint ripple remains where it was last stirred. The flame flickers again, then steadies. The courtyard stones feel ancient beneath bare feet. They have witnessed countless evenings, laughter, grief, silence. Above, the moon drifts higher, marked by thin clouds like veils of memory. In this gentle glow, the cups begin to empty, one sip at a time, slowly, deliberately. The liquid lowers within the vessel, leaving faint traces along the inner rim. The warmth remains, even as the drink diminishes. It is said that history does not vanish, it dissolves into habit. The cacao tree once stood beneath jungle canopy, its pods catching starlight. It crossed oceans and entered courts. It endured iron skies and velvet evenings. Now it rests in a simple courtyard, warmed by modest flame. Perhaps this is where it always longed to be, not elevated, not displayed, but held. The two figures fall into comfortable silence. No more words are needed. The night carries its own quiet music, the distant call of an owl, the faint rustle of leaves brushing stone. The final drops are sipped, the cups are set down gently. Silence settles like soft dust upon the courtyard floor. The flame dims, shrinking inward until only embers glow. Their light pulses faintly, then steadies once more. In that stillness, something ancient lingers. Perhaps it was never meant to be found in grand ceremonies alone. Perhaps sacredness hides in ordinary evenings, in shared warmth, in the quiet exchange of breath beneath celestial sky. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and if we listen now, as sleep approaches like a slow tide across stone, we may hear the faint murmur of centuries within that emptied cup. Not loudly, not urgently, but gently. A reminder that the sacred seed, though transformed again and again, continues to live in the small act of sharing. The courtyard grows darker. The stars shimmer softly. The embers fade to ash. And somewhere, far beyond these walls, the cacao tree blooms once more beneath moonlit leaves, unaware of empire, unaware of industry, unaware of courts and cloisters. It simply flowers. And here, in the hush between waking and dream, the warmth between hands lingers a little longer. History rests not in monuments tonight. It rests in the memory of sweetness balanced by shadow, carried quietly into sleep. There is a quiet kitchen where only one candle burns. Its flame is small, steady, and patient. The walls around it are washed in amber light, their edges dissolving into shadow. Outside the window, night gathers softly, marked by the moon and scattered with distant stars. On the wooden table rests a porcelain cup filled with dark liquid. Beside it a spoon. It is said that transformation often begins with the smallest gesture. The spoon dips into a bowl of white crystals, sugar, pale and shimmering like frost upon winter stone. Slowly, almost ceremonially, it lowers into the chocolate. The crystals fall, they disappear beneath the surface, and then the stirring begins. A spiral forms, light folding into shadow, sweetness dissolving into bitterness, edges softening. The swirl widens gently, then narrows, then widens again. The surface trembles with subtle currents, and for a moment it seems as though the cup holds a small universe turning upon itself. What is lost and what is revealed in this gentle alchemy? It is said that chocolate was not always sweet. In forgotten corners of the earth, beneath ancient canopies and within stone temples, cacao was consumed in its raw austerity, bitter, grounding, almost severe. Its darkness was part of its sacredness. It demanded presence. It did not flatter the tongue. But as centuries unfolded, as ships crossed veiled seas and cultures intertwined, sweetness entered the story. Sugar, itself born of distant fields and laboring hands, joined cacao in slow embrace, and the world changed its taste. In courts and salons, sweetness made chocolate beloved. In kitchens and factories, it softened edges and widened appeal. Children reached for it without hesitation. Elders savored it in quiet contentment. The bitterness did not vanish. It lingered beneath the sweetness like memory beneath laughter. It is said that within this blending resides a mirror of the human heart. For what do we so often attempt, if not to soften what is raw, to veil intensity with comfort, to temper sorrow with sweetness? The spoon continues its motion, round and round, a spiral that echoes ancient grinding stones, monastic patience, industrial rhythm. Within the cup, two elements once distinct now move toward unity. Some believe that chocolate's transformation through sugar reflects humanity's longing for gentleness. The rawness of life, its sharp edges, its uncertainties, can feel overwhelming. Sweetness offers reprieve, a softening of experience, yet beneath the silence, the darker note remains. Taste carefully, and you will find it. That faint, grounding bitterness, that depth that refuses to be erased. Perhaps it is this balance that makes chocolate enduring. Too bitter, and it alienates. Too sweet, and it forgets itself. Between the two lies harmony. In ancient alchemy, transformation was not merely chemical, it was spiritual. To blend elements was to seek balance between shadow and light, earth and sky, body and breath. In this simple cup, something of that ancient impulse survives. The sugar crystals dissolve completely now, no trace of their whiteness remains visible, and yet the liquid has changed, its aroma has softened, its surface gleams differently beneath candlelight. Has something been lost, or merely reshaped? It is said that sacredness does not depend on severity, nor does sweetness negate depth. Rather, they exist in quiet dialogue, each revealing the other. Consider the cacao tree beneath jungle sky. Its pods held bitterness in abundance. That bitterness once steadied warriors and accompanied sacred rites. It demanded attention. Now in this kitchen, sweetness makes the drink accessible. It welcomes rather than tests. It comforts rather than challenges. And still, beneath layers of refinement, the ancient seed remains. Hidden like a memory buried in soil, whispers tell us that beneath every transformation lies origin. The spoon slows, the stirring grows gentler, the swirl fades into stillness. Steam rises once more, veiled and delicate. It curls upward like incense from an unseen altar. The one who holds the cup pauses before sipping. In that pause, reflection emerges. Does the original sacredness survive beneath layers of sweetness? Perhaps it does. Perhaps it rests quietly within the bitterness that refuses to vanish entirely. Perhaps it waits for moments of stillness, when the tongue lingers, when the mind quiets, when the heart listens. It is said that in quiet reflection we can taste more than flavor. We can taste history. The jungle canopy, the stone altar, the monastery corridor, the iron beam, the moonlit courtyard. All converge in this single sip. The drink touches the lips. Warmth spreads slowly. Sweetness arrives first, gentle and familiar. Then beneath it a shadow, subtle but steady. Bitterness as anchor, shadow as depth, light entering darkness, darkness giving shape to light. In this blending there is no battle, only dance. The candle flickers. Outside the night deepens. Wind brushes faintly against glass. Somewhere in the distance a clock marks time with patient echo. The cup grows lighter as it empties, sip by sip, each swallow carrying both sweetness and memory. It is said that alchemy seeks not to erase shadow, but to integrate it. To recognize that gold and ash, sugar and cacao, joy and sorrow, all arise from the same earth. Within the human spirit, transformations occur quietly. Raw grief becomes softened remembrance. Sharp longing becomes gentle nostalgia. Bitterness becomes wisdom. Perhaps chocolate's journey mirrors our own, shaped by culture, tempered by desire, rooted in something ancient and untamed. The final sip is taken. The cup rests empty upon the table. The spoon lies at the bottom, its handle leaning slightly to one side. A faint trace of dark liquid clings to the rim, marking where sweetness once met porcelain. That trace remains. It is small, almost insignificant, and yet it speaks. A quiet testament to the dance between shadow and light. Perhaps it was never meant to be resolved completely. Perhaps the sacredness of cacao does not reside solely in its bitterness, nor solely in its sweetness, but in their union. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen, and if we listen now, in the hush between candlelight and sleep, we may hear that echo, soft and enduring, not of sugar alone, not of shadow alone, but of alchemy, of transformation that does not destroy origin, but carries it forward in new form. The candle burns lower, the room grows dim. The spoon remains in the cup, resting in quiet acceptance. And beneath the silence, the ancient seed continues its journey, hidden, veiled, yet alive within every gentle swirl. As night folds inward and breath slows, the trace along the rim catches one final glimmer of light, then fades, leaving only warmth and memory, and the faintest taste of something both sweet and eternal. There is a place no chart has captured, no ink has traced its borders, no compass has pointed toward its heart. It lies beyond the margins where maps fade into pale parchment. In that quiet space, cartographers once labeled only with suggestion. Here, perhaps, something wild remains. It is said that if you walk far enough, past the last village, past the final trade road, beyond the echo of markets and the distant hum of machinery, you may come upon it. A grove. Wind moves gently through its leaves, carrying the scent of earth and rain. The air feels older here, as though it has lingered untouched for centuries. Light filters through the canopy in soft fragments, scattering across moss and fallen branches like celestial dust. In this hidden sanctuary, cacao grows as it once did, not in ordered rows, not beneath the gaze of overseers, not harvested to meet distant demand. Here it grows wild, unmeasured, sacred in its solitude. The trunks rise slender and patient from the forest floor. Their bark is mottled, marked by seasons of sun and storm. Pale blossoms emerge directly from their wood, delicate, almost shy, like stars resting briefly upon living bark. It is said that in places untouched by intention, sacredness feels closer. No porcelain cups wait nearby. No sugar crystals gleam in bowls. No iron beams arch overhead. Only roots pressing quietly into soil. Only leaves breathing beneath sky. As we step inward, away from commerce and empire, away from velvet salons and factory floors, something shifts within us. The pace slows, sound softens, even thought begins to loosen its grip. In forgotten corners of the earth, myth feels close enough to touch. Here, among trunks and vines, one might almost believe that spirits still linger between branches. Whispers tell us that gods once walked among roots, that Quetzalcoatl himself carried cacao through these shaded paths, offering it to humanity not as commodity but as gift. The stories feel less distant here, less symbolic, as though they might rise at any moment from behind a curtain of leaves. The grove does not announce itself. It does not demand reverence. It simply exists. Pods hang heavy and luminous against green shadow, ridged and curved, shifting in hue from soft gold to deep crimson. They sway gently in wind marked by the moon. Within each pod, seeds rest in pale embrace. Unaware of markets, unaware of factories, unaware of salons and monasteries. It is said that the seed remembers even when humans forget. But what would happen if all memory of chocolate vanished tomorrow? If no one stirred a pot in a quiet kitchen? If no child unwrapped a silvered bar? If no philosopher lifted a porcelain cup? Would the tree still hold its sacredness, or is sanctity born from human story alone? This question moves through the grove like mist at dawn. Perhaps sacredness resides not in recognition, but in being. The tree flowers whether watched or not. The pod ripens whether praised or not. The seed falls to soil whether cherished or not. In this hidden grove, cacao returns to its original silence. No sugar tempers its bitterness. No ledger records its yield. No ship carries it across veiled seas. Here, bitterness remains unsoftened, yet it does not feel harsh. It feels whole, as though sweetness and shadow were never separate to begin with. The forest floor is thick with fallen leaves, soft underfoot, marked by spiral patterns of decay and renewal. Insects hum faintly. A distant bird calls, then falls silent. Time feels different here, unmeasured, unhurried. It is said that beneath the silence of such places, truths too gentle for noise reside. We sit for a moment upon a fallen log, breathing in the scent of damp earth and distant rain. Light shifts across bark in slow rhythm. A breeze moves through canopy, scattering tiny fragments of sunlight like fallen stars. Origins endure even when forgotten. Empires rise and dissolve, industries expand and collapse, names etched into stone fade into dust, but the grove remains. Roots holding soil, leaves drinking sky, seeds waiting patiently within protective shell. In this stillness, we sense that progress has never fully erased what came before. It has merely layered new stories atop old roots. Perhaps sacredness is not fragile. Perhaps it waits beneath layers of human invention, like a seed buried deep in earth, dormant but alive. Whispers tell us that if one listens carefully enough, the grove speaks, not in language, not in prophecy, but in presence. A reminder that the first dawn still lingers in shaded places, that the original breath of cacao, its wild bitterness, its grounding depth, remains intact beyond the reach of refinement. Twilight begins to gather. The sky above shifts from pale gold to indigo. Fireflies emerge one by one, flickering like fallen stars caught between trunk and vine. Their glow pulses softly, then fades, then pulses again. The grove is marked by the moon now. Silver light filters through leaves, casting delicate shadows upon bark. Pods gleam faintly, luminous against darkness. It is said that in twilight, boundaries soften. The line between myth and memory blurs. The stories of gods walking among roots feel almost tangible again. But no figure emerges, no voice calls out, only wind, only breath, only the steady rhythm of life continuing without witness. Perhaps it was never meant to be found. Perhaps the forgotten grove exists not on any physical map, but within the quiet space of remembrance, a place we return to when we seek origin beneath ornament. The fireflies drift lower. The forest hums gently, then grows still. We rise slowly, leaving the grove as we found it, untouched, unmeasured, sacred in its solitude. As we step back toward the world of polished cups and wrapped bars, of markets and machines, something of the grove lingers, a subtle awareness, a grounding breath, the knowledge that beneath every sweet indulgence rests a wild beginning. Where memory fades, the tree still stands. Where maps end, roots continue. And as night deepens fully, the grove breathes softly beneath constellations, keeper of a truth too gentle to name. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. Tonight, beneath star-marked sky, the forgotten grove remains beyond the map. Not lost, not claimed, simply waiting. There is a room where the light has grown soft. Curtains are half drawn. The world beyond the window has dissolved into indigo shadow, marked by the moon and scattered with patient stars. The air feels still, as though even time itself has slowed its breathing. Beside a quiet bed rests a single cup. Steam rises from it in pale ribbons, curling upward like veiled incense. The scent is familiar, warm, deep, faintly sweet. It carries with it something older than the walls, older than the house, older perhaps than memory. It is said that at the end of every journey we return to something simple. A cup, a pause, a final sip before sleep. Night gathers gently at the window. The world outside fades into sacred hush. Within the cup, dark liquid reflects the small lamp beside the bed, a trembling star captured in porcelain. The hand that lifts it does so slowly, not in ceremony, not in spectacle, but in quiet gratitude. As the cup nears the lips, centuries linger within it. For this drink has traveled farther than the one who holds it. It has crossed forests and oceans, temples and factories. It has been lifted toward gods and offered in markets. It has been debated by monks and savored by philosophers. It has warmed the hands of workers and lovers alike. All of it rests here now, in this single humble sip. In forgotten corners of the earth, cacao once hung heavy beneath jungle canopy. its pods ripened in shadow marked by the moon. Priests poured its bitterness into painted vessels, foam blooming like celestial breath. It was not sweetness they sought, but awakening, a sacred stirring beneath the ribs. The steam rising from the bedside cup carries a faint echo of that forest. Whispers tell us that gods once walked among roots, that sacred seeds were offered not as indulgence, but as bridge between realms. The drink was dark and austere, grounding and severe, yet centuries unfolded. Ships crossed veiled seas, sails billowed against silvered horizons. Cacao entered foreign breath, encountered sugar and spice. In monasteries, debates murmured beneath vaulted ceilings. Could sweetness become prayer? Could bitterness be softened without losing its soul? The cup tilts slightly, a sip is taken, warmth spreads slowly, sweetness arrives first, gentle, comforting. But beneath it, as always, shadow lingers. A faint bitterness, grounding and true. It is said that chocolate became beloved not because it forgot its darkness, but because it carried it gently. In velvet salons, thinkers gathered beneath chandeliers of crystal light. Chocolate warmed their hands as revolutions were whispered into existence. In factories beneath iron skies, machinery shaped it into bars for countless homes. In moonlit courtyards, it was shared between quiet voices and open hearts. Each era reshaped what it inherited. Each generation stirred its own meaning into the cup. And now, here, beside a quiet bed, chocolate has become symbol of continuity, of humanity's endless reshaping of what it reveres. The hand holding the cup pauses again. Steam curls upward, then fades. The lamp flickers slightly. Beneath sweetness lies shadow. Beneath shadow, seed. Beneath seed, soil warmed by ancient sun. That soil still exists somewhere, beneath canopy and rain, in forgotten groves beyond maps and markets. The cacao tree still blooms in solitude, unaware of porcelain and sugar, unaware of bedtime rituals. And yet, its presence is here, within this cup, within this moment. It is said that objects become sacred not only through origin, but through attention, through the quiet awareness we bring to them, through the stories we pour into them, sip by sip. Was chocolate ever truly the drink of gods? Or did it become divine through the stories we told, through the reverence of priests, the curiosity of explorers, the debates of monks, the conversations of philosophers, the comfort of lovers, the solace of solitary nights? The question drifts gently through the quiet room, like a thread of smoke. No answer demands itself. Perhaps divinity was never fixed within the seed alone. Perhaps it emerged each time a human heart encountered it with wonder. The cup grows lighter. Another sip. The warmth settles deeper now, spreading through chest and limbs like a soft tide. Breath slows. Thoughts begin to loosen their edges. Outside, the moon drifts higher, pale and patient. Its light casts a faint silver path across the floorboards. The night feels oceanic in its depth, vast and calm. Within the cup, only a small measure remains. The liquid reflects the room in miniature, lamp, window, shadow. It holds the present moment as though cradling it gently. It is said that journeys do not end, they dissolve. Forest altar dissolves into monastery pot. Monastery pot dissolves into salon cup. Salon cup dissolves into factory mold. Factory mold dissolves into kitchen mug. Kitchen mug dissolves into bedside stillness. The final sip is taken slowly. There is no rush. The cup is lowered, then set upon the table beside the bed. Porcelain meets wood with a soft, almost sacred sound. Silence expands like a calm sea. The warmth lingers faintly upon the lips. The scent remains in the air for a moment longer, then thins. Breath slows. The journey, which began beneath first dawn in a forgotten forest, now rests beside a quiet pillow. It does not vanish. It simply settles. Perhaps it was never meant to be resolved. Perhaps sacredness is not a destination, but a thread woven through transformation, from bitter offering to sweet comfort, from ritual to routine. The lamp is dimmed. Shadows deepen. The cup remains upon the table, empty now, save for a faint trace along its rim, a dark crescent against white porcelain, like a memory, like the outline of something once held. In that trace rests forest and sea, altar and factory, grove and courtyard. In that trace rests both shadow and light. Some voices only echo when we are ready to listen. As the eyes grow heavy and the body yields to rest, a distant echo stirs, of leaves rustling beneath ancient canopy, of fireflies flickering like fallen stars, of wind moving gently through a forgotten grove beyond the map. The room grows quieter still. The world beyond the window fades, and somewhere beneath starlight, the cacao tree continues to bloom. Untouched by empire, untouched by industry, rooted in soil, warmed by an ancient sun. The last warmth lingers in the chest, then softens, then becomes dream.